Hey fellow cooks, welcome back to A Global Kitchen. Today we're going to make a fabulous noodle soup, abundant with mushrooms and leafy greens, and with a wonderful rich broth. It's inspired from a meal that I ate at the Thien Mu pagoda in the central city of Hue. It's Hue's oldest and most famous monastery. There, boys as young as 6 live away from their families. Through guidance from senior monks, they study and train to become monks themselves. They rotate, spending time doing chores in different parts of the monastery, even in the kitchen. But they still have time for fun activities like playing soccer. I spent time in the kitchen with some of them over several days, and this is one of the meals that they prepared while I was there. Now, the recipe in my book is a close approximation to what they made that day, but for today's video, I've made some simple substitutions, and I encourage you to do the same based on what's available at your local grocery store or your own food preferences. So let's start off with the broth. Pour the rich vegetable stock into a large pot. You can find a recipe for it in the Basic Pantry series part of my channel. Add a few slices of smashed ginger, a tablespoon of red miso, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, a teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of mushroom powder. It's basically finely ground dried shiitake mushrooms. Give it a good stir and bring it to a boil over medium-high heat. Cover it and turn the heat to low to allow the ginger to infuse for 15 minutes. As the stock infuses, prepare the rest of the ingredients. The tofu I'm using today looks a little spongy. It's because I cubed it, froze it, thawed it, then squeezed out all of the water. This makes it chewier and allows it to soak up more flavor. Shallow fry the tofu in some oil over medium-high heat until it's golden brown all over. This will give it a nice depth of flavor. I'm using 3 different types of mushrooms today. For the portobello mushrooms, cut them into thin, more manageable bite-sized pieces. Trim away a bit of the base of the oyster mushroom. You can thinly cut it and add it to the soup if you like. Tear any larger mushrooms into smaller pieces. For the thin enoki mushrooms, trim off 2 inches from the bottom. Use it in a vegetable stock. Then cut the rest of the mushrooms in half to make them easier to eat. Thinly slice some peeled carrots on an angle and cut them into thin matchsticks. I decided to use bok choy today. You could also use some other greens like blanched kale, watercress, Swiss chard, or spinach. Bok choy typically has dirt that hides in its crevices, so separate the stalks and give it a good rinse. Cut the leaves and stalks into 1-inch bite-sized pieces and keep them separate. For the smaller core or small pack choy, cut them in half. Thinly slice some whole scallions on the diagonal, as well as some long, mild red chili. After the ginger has infused in the soup for at least 15 minutes, scoop it out and discard. Bring the soup back to a simmer and toss in the oyster and portobello mushrooms. Cook the mushrooms for several minutes before adding the tofu. Stir in the bok choy stalks and simmer for another couple of minutes, then add in the bok choy leaves and carrot matchsticks. Cook for another minute before tossing in the enoki mushrooms and scallions. Cover it and turn off the heat. Meanwhile, add some wheat noodles to a pot of boiling water and cook until tender, yet still a little chewy, about 3 to 4 minutes for dry noodles, then drain them. Give the soup one last taste and adjust the seasonings if needed. We've added a lot of layers of flavor, but it might need a touch of salt or black pepper. It's best to use large soup bowls. If you don't have any, you'll find affordably priced ones at Asian grocers. If you find your noodles are too long, cut them into more manageable lengths. Portion some noodles, roughly a good handful, into a bowl. Spoon some of the mushrooms, tofu, and bok choy over top, and ladle in enough broth to just cover the noodles. Sprinkle over some cilantro and add some chili slices for extra heat. So I'm gonna try the mushroom leafy green noodle soup. Let's dig in here. Let me try some broth. I really love this broth. It's filled with umami from the addition of the miso, but also you're starting off with that really wonderful rich vegetable stock. Make sure you check that out in the Basic Pantry series. And then you've got this really nice hit of ginger that's mellow in the background from just the light infusion of 15 to 20 minutes. And if you're a mushroom lover like I am, this is a great bowl of noodle soup on a cold wintry day. Now I'll leave the list of ingredients that I used today in the description box below. You can find the original recipe and its instructions in my cookbook, Vegetarian Vietnam. In the upcoming weeks, I'm going to be making more Vietnamese vegan noodle soups. So do come back and check and see what I've been making. Or better yet, subscribe to my channel. And if you make the soup, tag me on social media, let me know how it turned out. Thanks for watching today, bye, and happy cooking.